just got in our latest release to the Alien franchise, so it's time to stop and rank them all from my least favorite to my favorite. Welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of the Alien franchise as a whole, what is your ranking for those films, and make sure to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already to join in film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. Coming in last place, we have Alien vs. Predator Requiem. Now this just feels like a mess throughout the film, just throughout the writing and what it's doing with all its characters, becoming unappealing, feeling artificial with the way that it goes about the natural progression of the story, and just how that introduces the aliens as well as the predators, how that just combines those together. It's not necessarily even a fun film to the stretch of having a blast for the Alien vs. Predator being a good concept on its own, but they're missing Weyland Enterprises as well, taking away the main portion of what sort of brings them and ties in the film together. And so it just feels like there's less stakes to be had. While there are some kills and things that go about, the characters just feel less appealing to just how you're building upon them and trapping them in all these different places and having a slow progression to that final thing by having multiple characters that don't really build up to be anything because of all these different segments, how you're building up different characters while also killing off characters rather quickly once they introduce those predators and aliens. That makes it feel very meaningless by the end of the day. And at number 3, we have Alien Resurrection. Now, this just goes into bizarre choices. Just having the return of Sigourney Weaver just has her own role, being a clone of herself, and just what they do with the experimentation of that twist reveal just feels uncompelling. And just the characters throughout, even throughout the beginning and throughout the whole ship, they also feel uncompelling, less reason to care about them as a whole. And so it just feels a repeat while also being a lot worse than the others because of how they establish certain ideas, certain things that go about the way that just become uninteresting. It has noteworthy action in certain aspects, but some of the CGI feels less fulfilled, and the way they take in one of the android robots and make her one of the more compelling characters, just it puts a sour taste in the idea of what you're really asking for this film as a whole. And at number 7, we have Alien vs. Predator. Now this one, it is strange with some of the decisions. Certain character motivations don't necessarily always make sense. How things align with the franchise definitely don't make sense. Just having this underground base, but taking it for what it is and just dissolving all your expectations of actuality of what you're expecting for aliens and predators already taking place underground on Earth. How that makes sense, I don't know, but what we're getting out of the characters, while they're not as compelling, there's certainly some interesting ideas what they do with the Alien vs. Predator action that delivers on some fronts that becomes entertaining to be had. And also having this one human sort of team up with the predator, giving them motivation. It's a weird way to go about it, but it does work in some way for what brought me on board, brought me a little bit more to the substance rather than pure entertainment for being so bad it's good, but having some good nature to the film that lasts throughout what I'm really getting out of film. Once things pick up, once they really progress into building the lore of the aliens as well as the predator, even though it's a weird one set location here on Earth. Next up, we have Alien 3. Now, this one is a problematic film from the get-go, where the writers were sort of writing it as they go. David Fincher was trying to film it, and then they ran out of script because they were trying to do it throughout filming. And so, it feels a little bit of a general mess, but there is some entertainment, some progression that feels a little natural to what I'm really expecting out of that big of a mess. And so, what we get out of David Fincher's directorial debut, it certainly isn't a great one to start off on, and that shows the obvious studio involvement was not a great method or strategy, just trying to write it as they were filming it. There's certain aspects to the characters that are delivering on a certain front that isn't necessarily noteworthy to where it is a follow-up to, but there's certain aspects of where it builds its characters, certain little twists, what they do with the android, or little involvement of how it's progressing the story as a whole. While it certainly isn't necessarily leading to this grand motion of where we're getting out of the Alien lore, and how that involves the franchise as a whole, it does have its own merits for what it's worth. And at number 5, we have Prometheus. Now, this is another one that digs deeper into the lore, this time from Alien Ridley Scott again. And so what we get out of this one, it's quite interesting because it's so vastly different than what Ridley Scott brings in Alien Covenant, but it's visually striking with all of its looks to the film. You're getting a higher production now that we're really getting into a little bit of the modern age, and so just what you get out of that, and then Michael Fassbender as David just brings a great android character, and some of the other characters just become a little bit forgettable for the nature of what I'm getting into. It's not a particularly bad film, but not one that I felt like really going back into when streaming these franchise again for the sake of this ranking. And so just some aspects to this film do work and do deserve a merit to what we're getting out of the lore, but the stakes are a little underwhelming at some certain points that just doesn't deliver all the way through. Which takes us into Alien Covenant, which I watched for the first time of all of these films, and I just generally enjoyed what we got out of the nature of this. It isn't necessarily top tier what you're getting out of this franchise, but it still delivers on some good merits. And like I said, it's a vastly different one than what we got from Ridley Scott in Prometheus, exploring more of the lore, having some great action that really actually enhances the experience, and so dives into different things that go about along the way, and the duplication of Michael Fassbender, his character as you're playing, the moral complexities that you're getting out of these android characters as you know what's to follow up with the future, or acting these as the prequels to what we're getting in Alien and the following franchise, just gives a great debut for what we're really expecting out of something like this, especially once we got Prometheus, which was kind of middle tier, and then getting into this one, just delivering a little bit higher stakes for what you're getting out of, and the action just has something to be said about what you're getting out of the franchise as a whole. And at number 3, we have Alien, the classic that really does have its own substance to its own story. It is slow moving, and at times that can be a drawback for me, even as a sci-fi fan that is a fan of Dune or other 3-hour classics that just deserve their own runtime. But this, even at 2 hours, can be a little bit drawn back for the substance that's really packed in tight. There are certain keynotes that don't hit their right chord, and the way they build up these characters, some of them just aren't as compelling to me to rate it as highly as some others, but I still don't discredit it for having a bad story or what it has to be had as a whole. So just a natural progression. It's not a mixed bag. It's definitely a lot higher standard than what I could really be expecting for this film for the time that it was made in. Ridley Scott definitely introduced something fantastic for the xenomorphs and how their progression, the world building, even though we're not getting deep into the lore yet, you're not necessarily needing anything out of this one set location, this claustrophobic setting that really enhances the characters, the ideas, and building on just the idea of this alien getting in this ship once they're moving throughout space and discovering deep ideas with the classic twist of the android that's hidden among them that really enhances some ideas that you're ultimately not necessarily always expecting out of the films as a whole. Which leads me into number 2, we got Aliens. Now this one is pretty much on par with Alien, so I could watch either one of them and they may balance out and top the other from rewatch to rewatch. And so this one still has its own merit for what you're getting out of the action, not necessarily slow moving and philosophical as the original Alien movie, but it still definitely deserves its own place among the highly credited films. And so just what we're getting out of Sigourney Weaver, how she returns as Ripley, definitely feels like she still has some good writing to her camera, this time with James Cameron behind the camera, and that really does suffice to what you're getting out of the film, the writing, how it's progressing as a whole, and just establishing all the characters to be interesting to some standard. And that's where I surface it a little bit better, at least upon this watch, that I really was into the writing, the progression, and there's some parts at the beginning where it is a little slow moving that still holds it back from being top tier sci-fi as a whole, but still deserves its own placement within something that has some good storytelling as a whole. Which leads me into number 1. We have Alien Romulus. I hope this is not just me using recency bias, but for me, this really blended the best of Alien and Aliens, James Cameron and Ridley Scott's film, that really brings in all the action, brings in all these meaningful motives to the actual devices to the film. And as a prequel to Aliens, it also integrates elements of Prometheus that entices the plot to move along the way, bringing in some awesome performances, while also taking a modern take, using all the modern technology that wasn't available back then, to be able to make this visually striking, while also having several different aliens, higher stakes that you're getting these teens or younger adults that are trying to escape this place where they're in quarantine. And so that just creates the consequence that follows along about generally the same story, but with new stakes and different things they progress throughout, with also bringing a key character from the first Alien movie that I won't spoil, and delivering on something that was rather surprising as well, for how you're just getting all the action and bringing in all this great cinematography. Fede Alvarez just enhancing something as sort of a remake to what we're getting as a whole, just becoming surprising, because I'm a fan of the Evil Dead remake, what he did with that. And so what Fede Alvarez brings to this film as well, there's certain actresses and other characters that just really can show their horrified on screen, which is really what elevated my experience, just being able to experience it for the first time, just becoming something that I love out of her franchise and making it my number 1 film of the Alien franchise. So that's just my ranking as of now for the Alien franchise. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of the Alien franchise as a whole and how you would rank the films. Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you aren't already, to join the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.